Dealing with a disrespectful executive director could make you want to crash out and risk it all. You might want to bring your brother or sister up to the job to deal with them. Okay? But we are elevated. We are refined men upgrading our lives, so we can't handle it that way. But I'm going to tell you how to deal with, how to put a disrespectful executive director in their place, in her place, without getting fired. All right? And I know it's tough because a lot of us come from backgrounds where it's encouraged to deal with folks severely, right? Crash out. Let them know what you're thinking immediately, okay? But we got to alter how we move, right? It's a lot at stake here, and it's tough breaking old habits and getting comfortable with new ways. But I'm here to coach you through it, all right? First of all, so you're dealing with a disrespectful executive director. In my case, it was actually the chief of staff, but the same rules apply. The first thing you should know, right? And maybe this is your first white collar job, okay? You're getting acclimated to the corporate structure. You can't handle it like you in the streets, right? I know we like to take care of things on our own, but this is one environment where you shouldn't be embarrassed to go in with a partner, okay? Meaning sometimes there are other folks in the organization who know this person. If this person is problematic with you, they've probably been problematic with others. So somebody could be a partner, meaning take their advice, meaning slow down. Before you commit to a way of handling it on your own, be open to the suggestions of others. We're going to say a partner. Also, a partner could be someone who will speak on your behalf. The position I was working at the time was represented by a union, and somebody stopped me while I was on the way to this person's office and said, hey, because they could tell I was upset. They said, hey, won't you talk to the union? So that's what I did. I jumped on the phone with a union representative, and they gave me a green light to handle this situation a certain way. So don't be afraid to go in with a partner. The next thing you want to keep in mind, regardless of what you do, you need to be clear about what would make you whole in this situation. Because sometimes we settle for resolutions that don't really make us whole. And now you got to report to this person for the rest of your career or for the next few years, right? But you're not whole. So that unresolved matter just festers. So understand what you need out of the situation, okay? Get a partner. Understand what you need to be whole, to made whole. All right. Another real important key. I always say in conflict resolution, you give folks a way out. Yes, hold them accountable for what they did. And I got a great story about this too. I'm going to give you a story. Hold them accountable, but at the same time, you got to walk that fine line of giving folks a way out. Because when you trap a rat, they attack. I'm kidding, but seriously, you dealing with sensitive people in high positions sometimes. Like, imagine dealing with the executive director of your company and you press them so hard that they have no choice but to try and retaliate, right? So allow people to escape difficult situations with some dignity. Now, let me tell you exactly what happened to me. Like you, I was a guy from around the way on the come up. I was working my first white collar job and I liked it, but I guess there was a lapse in my judgment or a lapse in my confidence because I actually let this woman disrespect me. At the time, I didn't feel like I was blatantly being disrespected, but a second later, I thought about it and I said, I don't like what she did to me. Check it out. I was working in an office and there were a bunch of office suites all clustered together. And I knocked on the door where she was having a meeting with my immediate supervisor. And they welcomed me into the room. And I went to hand something to my supervisor. And the ED was in there. And she felt like I had reached across them. Now, I'm a respectful person. I didn't think I did anything crazy. But to her, she felt like I had gone across. And I let her chump me out. She said, She told my boss, Hand that back to him. My boss looked like. So she handed the thing back to me. And then she told me, now you give it back to her. But she wanted me to take another route. And like a dummy, I did it. And at first it was just like, but when I went back to my desk and thought about it, it started to fester. And my heart started to race. And it felt like my blood was boiling. I was hot. I was like, yo, I let her play me, right? I'm really feeling like I let her play me. So I got pissed, and then my boss saw me a little later and she could see that I was worked up. I think we all knew it was like some BS, but we wanted to have some respect. I think because of the lady's age and because of that dynamic between our people, we wanted to respect her kind of like an OG. But what she did was something you do at church, not at work. So anyway, I said, nah, I'm stepping to her. So I never forget, man. We worked in a big building, and it had like different corridors and sections. She was all the way on the other side of the building, man. I walked all the way over there, and when I got there, like her office was in its own suite, and there was a secretary in front of her door. And I said, is Annie here? And her secretary was like, what's up? And I didn't even really tell her the story, but she knew like it was some mess. And that's when she was like, yo, she didn't even ask me for the details. That's how you know this person is problematic. She said, won't you go ahead and call somebody from the union? And I wanted to say, fuck all that union shit, right? But I mean, I was already a sensible guy. You know, that's how I got to the position. But I stopped and I said, you know what? All right. So I went all the way back across the building to my office and I called up a union rep, right? And keep in mind, remember when I said you always leave people a way out. So I went back, I called the union. They said, what's going on? I said, well, such and such happened and I want to let her know, right? They said, what do you want to do? That's what I said. I want to let her know how I feel. And they said, well, I think that's appropriate. Go ahead and set up a call with the director. So I sent an email and she replied, but her reply was a bit dismissive, but I wasn't letting up. She felt my energy, as they say, and we wound up on the phone together. She called me, like she knew I was serious. So now we're on the phone and it's me, right? Just like some entry level, you know, whatever, my first white collar job, just a around the way boy, you know, dealing with the executive director, aka the chief of staff. And we kind of chopping it up, and she like, what's the problem? And I'm like, well, I don't like how you did that. You know what I mean? Like, take the thing and hand the thing back. And yo, she was stone faced. She tried to remain stone faced. She wasn't trying to crack. She didn't want to admit that she had done anything wrong. But yo, I didn't crack. I didn't, you know what I mean? I was solid. And it got to a moment where I had expressed fully what I was feeling, and it was on her. And you know how they say when you're negotiating, like the first one to talk loses? We both got quiet. So it's me, and I'm like in my early 20s, and it's her, she probably like in her 60s, and we both just quiet. And then she cracked. Well, before she cracked, she said this. She said, well, you know, I did that to you because you kind of remind me of like a son. And I said, but I ain't your son. Y'all would have been proud of me. She was like, you know what I mean? Like a son. I said, but I'm not your son. You know what I mean? That shit could be in a movie if they do a movie about my life. So anyway, it got to a point where we're both just quiet and we waiting. And then she gave it up. She was like, well, I apologize. Got my W, right? But you got to walk a fine line, because when she got quiet, I could have wanted to curse her out. But you got to know when to chill. You know, I chilled. I waited. And had she not apologized explicitly, I would have given her a way out, because as a young man on my come up, keeping that job and keeping my reputation intact and adding those bullets to my resume was more important than the win. Than a certain win. I did not need a specific win, but I wanted to be heard. And that was the resolve that I had put in my mind, to be heard. Now, if you are a round the way guy on the come up trying to upgrade your life and live a more refined life, check out this next video.